Hi, Matthew Morgan here, Eastfield Gunroom. But you might be wondering what these are. Have I taken up some kind of musical instrument? Stay tuned to the end of the video and find out more. Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. I am Matthew Morgan. It is probably Sunday evening, and once again you join us for a fantastic gun review. Before I start, as ever, I want to thank you all for liking the channel, subscribing and giving us the thumbs up. If you haven't already done that, please hit like, please hit subscribe, because we do appreciate your support. So today I'm going to show you something completely different. This is a gun we've not looked at on the channel before, and it's certainly a gun that here in the UK is quite a scarce thing to come across. Today we are going to look at the mighty Kolar. Kolar is an American shotgun. I'm sure there's lots of American viewers that enjoy the channel that will already know more about it than I do. This is the first time I've probably had one in my hands in probably 10 or 15 years, but I thought it was such an interesting gun with such an interesting purpose that I wanted to show it to you. So Kolar are a relative newcomer to shotgun manufacturing. If we go back to the early 1970s, Larry Kolar, I think his name was heavily involved with the manufacture of sub-gauge tubes for skeet shooting. And he then went on 20, 30 years later to start manufacturing competition guns of his own. And over in the States today, they've got a huge following, particularly for the discipline that we're going to discuss. So what we've got here, we have got a 30-inch Kolar Max sporting shotgun. Now this gun was manufactured, according to Kolar, early 2001, I believe it was, and it was supplied, as it is here today, with a full complement of sub-gauge tubes. So on this channel, we tend to talk about sporting shooting, game shooting, sometimes trap shooting. What we don't really cover is much about skeet shooting. Now, over in the USA, they've got NSSA skeet shooting. So what that means is that you shoot around the skeet with 12 gauge, and then you shoot around the skeet with 20 gauge, then 28, and then 410. And the idea behind that, and behind the concept of this particular gun, is what you have is you have a carrier, what's called a carrier barrel, and you put the sub-gauge tubes into that barrel and then you shoot. So what that means is the gun is exactly the same. So you've got the 12 gauge gun that moves the same, feels the same, recoils the same, but you're shooting with smaller calibers. So the essence of that is that it means that the whole thing is linear. It feels the same regardless of the caliber that you're shooting. Obviously with smaller gauges, 28, 410, you've got to be much more accurate. You've got to be more on your game because there's a smaller margin for error. But these guys in the States, they absolutely love this stuff. So before we really delve into the features and the specifications of this Kolar, what I should say is what you're getting here is you're kind of getting two for the price of one, because not only have you got the fantastic sub-gauge tube set, which we're going to look at shortly and how it works, but in essence, to start with, you've got this fantastic all singing, all dancing premium competition gun just in its 12 gauge format. So onto the action. It is not really like any other design. It's low profile, so it's kind of like a boss style. It's a little bit Perazzi-esque, very plain in its appearance. You got this nickel finish with this very slight, very minimal, like I said, border engraving, which just ties in with the fact this is a competition gun. It's designed to go out and eat clays day in, day out. That's what it's designed for. It's a very strong, durable design. There's virtually nothing on it. We've got this tiny little bit of leafy stuff on the side, and then underneath we've got what looks like a lion, a bit like the old Peugeot advert, if you ever remember those, and we've got the mark Kolar just engraved on there. Nothing on the bottom of the trigger guard. The trigger is completely plain, although it is adjustable. If we look inside the action, just take the barrels off. So just look at the thickness of these action sides, these action walls. This gun, as soon as you take it apart, because it feels heavy, it feels solid, and then you look at that, you can just see that this has been built for out and out competition shooting. And the whole strength things continue where you look where the barrels lock in. It's a little bit like a Beretta SO kind of lockup. And also if you look at the top of the action, there's obviously a kind of H-bar design, a little bit like those that Perazzi use. On the back of the action, you've got this really quite long top lever, which again is all to do with ease of use, getting it open nice and quick, putting loads and loads of shells through it. So we've got a safety catch, checker safety catch, really long back strap. So presumably that would couple with quite a long stop bolt, again for making the thing solidly put together and out durable. And then on the underside, the barrel selector is actually at the rear of the trigger. This gun is kind of Krieghoff-esque, and I certainly think that looking at it is where it kind of takes some of its inspiration from. So the trigger itself is adjustable. It's on a little rail here. You adjust it via the grub screw in the top of the trigger blade. And interestingly enough, if you look there, you can see that there's a recess where the trigger group sits into the action, because this gun has also got a detachable trigger. So whilst we talk about the trigger itself, I'm going to just get my little Allen key out and give this a little bit of a whiz in this grub screw. So the trigger is quite a slim design, quite pointy at the bottom, adjustable from the top where the grub screw sits into the very forward point of the trigger blade. And if we just finish taking this little grub screw out, you will see that another feather in the cap of the Kolar is that it has a fully detachable trigger unit. Ta-da! So if we make the Krieghoff comparison once more, of course with the Krieghoff you don't get a detachable trigger. You would have to look at the likes of Beretta DT10, Beretta DT11, Perazzi MX8, Keeman, Gamba, all guns we've looked at on this channel, so do check those videos out. Interestingly enough, this particular one's got a patent, well many patents, because obviously the design of it, it's quite unique. It doesn't look like a Perazzi, it doesn't look like a Gamba. We've got coil springs. Yeah, lots going on in there. You've got gold washed, I think it looks like hammers or tumblers. Very, very nicely put together. Very, very substantial. Just holding it in my hand, it feels probably like the heaviest trigger group I've ever picked up from a shotgun. Excellent trigger pulls. I would believe I've never shot one of these, but of course, these have got a following of some of the top shooters in the States. So if they're not happy with the trigger pulls, they wouldn't be shooting them, would they? We'll pop it back in for now, which is child's play. Is literally locate it in there, put the grub screw in, and then whereas we whizzed it out, the other technical term we use is wang it up, okay? And that brings us on to the barrels. Completely floating in the design. So we have got a spacer here, which is a third of the way along the length of the barrels. We have got a hanger at the other end, which again, a bit like a Krieghoff. Obviously, if we go back even further than Krieghoff, the gun that kind of gave the inspiration to the Krieghoff was the Remington 3200, which used to have a hanger design. The idea with this is you can, of course, change the point of impact. So if you put a different hanger on, essentially it increases the gap between the barrels, which would change the POI. And if you put a slightly thinner hanger on, again, it will compress the barrels, which again will change the point of impact, depending on what hanger you've got. On the top, we've got a file cut rib with a tram line, with a centre bead, 11 to 7 mil, I believe. And in terms of the back end, we look at the actual design of it. You can see where we've got these recesses where it locks into the action to give it that maximum strength. And also some of the parts here, not dissimilar to what kind of Caesar Guerini are trying to emulate these days with their Invictus range. If you look on the other side, obviously the Boss style action kind of continues. You can see it's quite a narrow platform there. This gun has got, interestingly enough, it's got Kolar arms, Inc. Racine, Wisconsin, USA, which of course is where it's manufactured. And on here it does say, which is very cool, use factory loaded target ammunition only. And what that does, that ties in with the fact that this comes with a carrier barrel, which we'll talk about shortly. And basically with the carrier barrel, you cannot put a standard 12 gauge cartridge in it. Interesting on the bottom of it, which is kind of more Perazzi or more Keeman-ish, under the design of the lumps. In terms of boring, it's not actually stamped on this gun. I believe they're about 18.5 though, because this is also 2 3/4 inch chambers, because let's not forget, this is an out and out competition shotgun. So these guns obviously available in various barrel lengths, just that we happen to have a 30-inch one here. Factory and multi-choked, their own kind of system for Kolar. And what we've got in here, we've got a couple of rhino chokes. And if we move on to the carrier barrels very shortly, of course, you've got a set of multi-choke for those as well. So we'll pop it together. Again, when the ejectors just go just down the sides of those massively thick action walls, and when you close it, very, very positive. Do you know what I mean? Just super clunky. We like that. Now, I'll keep talking about the fact that this is a beast. Now, it actually weighs 9 pounds 5 ounces. So again, not dissimilar to something like a Krieghoff Super Sport, but it's just going to be so smooth to use. Super, you know, there's absolute zero recoil in terms of the balance. Pretty much on the hinge pin, which I think is very important, because especially if you're going to be using those sub gauge tubes, you know, you need the balance to not be altered. With the addition of the carrier barrel, it needs to have the weight in the action and be proportioned, if you like. An interesting point here as well, you've got kind of a taper on the actual barrel wing itself. It's not completely parallel. I would imagine, again, that's down to balance and recoil absorption, would be my opinion. How about the wood? So what we've got here, this gun has got a fresh set of clothes, because when I first got hold of it, the stock was kind of a very yellow mapley colour. It was heavily lacquered, which was the original factory finish. Don't get me wrong, and I know it's very, very popular in the US. Here in the UK, we tend to prefer different finishes. We like oil finishes, we like darker wood. So what I decided was the best thing to do for this particular gun was to get it completely best London oil finished, and you must agree, it looks fantastic. So we have got a sporting Monte Carlo adjustable stock, factory Monte Carlo, virtually a very, very subtle palm swell, not a lot. Some quite funky checkering. We've got a double point with an extra point here and an extra curvy point, we'll call it, on the bottom of the grip. Obviously, it's completely the same on the other side. This particular gun has got a brand new Kikis recoil pad fitted to it. If you watch the channel, you know I'm a huge, huge fan of those recoil pads. And like I said, I haven't yet shot this, but at £9 5 ounces, slightly overboard barrels, all the weight in the bottom of the action, and a Kikis pad, I bet it don't even move. So the fore end, it's got this kind of fluted shape, like the front of Noah's Ark. Again, inspiration for the Krieghoff, no question at all. It looks very, very similar. A nice checkering style with lots of points. I like many points, with this border in the middle, which is a nice touch. And because it's got a lot of checkering on, remember, this is a competition gun. If you're out in all weathers, that's going to give you an awful lot of grip. So I keep banging on about these sub-gauge tubes, this NASA skeet and these carrier barrels, but what does this all mean? Right, so here we have got the Americase for the Kolar, which is a substantial piece of equipment as it ties in with the gun. It's got here the Choice of Champions, which is not a false claim. It weighs about as much as a Dodge Ram V8, and inside we have got all sorts of goodies. So what we've got here, we have got what appears to be another set of complete barrels. However, these are different. This is the carrier barrel. It says carrier barrel on it because there are no chambers in these barrels. And what that enables you to do, it enables you to get the sub-gauge tubes, and with the tool, which is known as a kinetic hammer, you essentially knock the tubes into the barrel, which I'm going to demonstrate now. We open up this flap of wonder, okay? There's the little Kolar man again. And in here we have got 6 tubes. So we have got a set of 410, 28 and 20 gauge. They're all got stickers on so we know which is which, because it says over and under, to make sure we put them in the right place. And if you look closely, you can see they've got extractors and everything. It is a complete, essentially, barrel that goes in a barrel, if you like, a bit like a Russian doll. So we've got, that's the under barrel. And at the business end, you've actually got a tiny little choke. Now, obviously, this is designed for NASA skeet. So the chokes that are supplied with these sub-gauge tubes are skeet chokes. And they basically just thread on to the end of the sub-gauge tube. How clever is that? So this is the under barrel. I would say 410. So what we do is we get our carrier barrel, we pop it in, and it slides in nicely like that. I won't push it all the way in. Obviously the extractor has to be at the bottom to extract the cartridge. And there you've just transformed that, obviously we do the top barrel as well, into a 410 sub-gauge competition shotgun. So you just pop the carrier barrel down, and as you can see, we have got a plethora of other little fancy tubes. We've got the 20 gauge, we've got the 28, and we've got the additional 410, all fitted, ready to go with little baby skeet chokes. I mean, it's incredibly clever when you look at this. It makes it a really, really versatile gun. But don't let that detract from the fact that just as a gun, the Kolar is a serious, serious out-and-out competition tool. You could use it for sporting. It's heavy enough to use for trap. You might want to adjust the stock accordingly. You could literally do anything with this shotgun. I talked a second ago about the kinetic hammer, and this is what that is. And the idea is you can get a proper seating when you put those sub-gauge tubes into the carrier barrel. And what we've also got here is this handy little tool, and that is for putting into the sub-gauge tubes just to make sure that it seats properly. You see it's tapered for the different caliber. It looks a bit like a child's toy. And then on top of that, we have got a couple of additional 12 gauge chokes. I believe the chokes that are in the gun currently are of a Rhino flavour, and I think they are both 3/8. So again, someone's potentially been using this for sporting disciplines. And then you've got various Allen keys and bits and pieces, and life wouldn't be complete without a barrel sticker. So we've got one here from Kolar in this incredibly well-made Americase. So that has been the fabulous Kolar Max NASA Skeet original sub-gauge tube carrier barrel Badger from Eastfield Gunroom. Just to give you an idea where Kolar are today, very small scale manufacturers, around about 300 guns a year, most pretty much custom spec, built to order, but they have such a huge following. Like I said, over in the US, they have got top shooters shooting these guns, and I would imagine that they are absolutely flat out in terms of production, because these are a gun that many shooters will aspire to. So like I said at the start of the video, very few people will have seen this. Have you owned a Kolar? Have you shot a Kolar? Have you got a Kolar? Put it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Have you shot NASA Skeet? Would you like to try NASA Skeet? I believe there are a couple of places where you can shoot it here in the UK. Or if you want information about this particular gun, just send me an email. Details are on the screen. Don't forget to check out the website, and if you have enjoyed this video, please do give us a like, recommend us to your friends, tell them that every Sunday there's a crazy man talking about guns on the YouTube. We do appreciate it. And from me, Matthew Morgan, and this Yank tank in the Dodge Ram case, I'll see you next week.